Welcome to another edition of our Explainer series. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today. For most of us, politics and personal finance can feel like, well, two completely different universes. Politicians are on TV throwing around billions and debating abstract fiscal rules, while we're sitting at the kitchen table stressing over a household electricity bill in pounds and pence. It often feels like what happens in the halls of government has literally zero to do with our everyday wallets. But the truth? These two worlds are deeply, intricately connected. Okay, let's dive into this, because when you heard that Britain had a new prime minister recently, what was your very first thought? I mean, did you immediately check your bank account? Probably not. But what happens in Downing Street actually ripples all the way down to our savings accounts and our mortgages. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's not always a straight line you can instantly see, but the policies, the market reactions, and the fiscal strategies of a new administration, they fundamentally shift the financial landscape we all operate in every single day. To make sense of the whole shebang, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by looking at Britain's new prime minister. Then we'll check out their first policies and promises. After that, we'll demystify gilt yields, look at taxes on your savings, and finally, wrap things up with a concrete savings action plan. Let's move right into Section 1, Britain's new prime minister and the latest political shifts. So on July 20th, 2026, Andy Burnham stepped into Downing Street as Britain's new prime minister. He's 56 years old, and right before taking office, he was the mayor of Greater Manchester, a job he'd held since 2017. He actually just became the leader of the Labour Party on July 16th after his predecessor resigned. And get this, his appointment makes him the UK's 7th prime minister in just over a decade. Whenever you get that much turnover at the very top of the government, financial markets pay incredibly close attention, setting the stage for new economic ripples across the whole country. Moving to Section 2. First, policies and promises, focusing on those immediate actions. And this brilliantly illustrates the dual approach we are seeing from the new government. On one side, you've got Prime Minister Burnham rolling out immediate consumer relief. Literally hours after taking office, he announced they are scrapping the 5% VAT on household electricity bills for 6 months, starting October 1st, 2026. For a typical household, you're looking at savings of about £45 over that period. It's not going to buy you a new car, but it is real immediate relief. But then, on the flip side, we have his new chancellor, John Healey, sending a completely different, very strict message to the markets. In his first speech to Treasury staff, Healey flat out stated, "Fiscal control is the first duty of any chancellery." So it's a really interesting contrast, right? Putting a few pounds back in our pockets while fiercely projecting fiscal discipline to the financial world. All right, Section 3, demystifying gilt yields, where we explain the bond markets. I know financial news can sometimes feel like alphabet soup, so let's tackle this intimidating economic jargon head-on because it directly impacts your money. So what exactly is a gilt yield? Simply put, a gilt yield is just the interest rate the UK government has to pay to borrow money from investors. Think of it like the government's very own mortgage rate. When investors get nervous about the government's finances, like maybe they're worried the government is going to borrow too much or inflation will spike, they see lending to the government as a lot riskier. And because of that perceived risk, investors demand higher returns. So when they demand those higher returns, the price of government bonds, which are called gilts, falls, and the yield shoots up. Which brings us to a massively important number. On his very first day, Burnham mentioned to reporters that he would make full use of any fiscal flexibility. Well, the markets heard that phrase and reacted almost instantly. On July 20th, the yield on 10-year gilts spiked 9 basis points to 5.04%, its absolute highest level since May. And it didn't stop there. The 30-year gilt yield hit 5.75%, and sterling actually dropped against both the dollar and the euro. It was a crystal clear sign of market jitters. But why should you care about bond markets? Well, let's look at the direct ripple effects. First off, UK mortgage rates are influenced by swap rates, and those track gilt yields. So when gilt yields go up, the cost for lenders to fund mortgages goes up too. For an average UK mortgage of around £205,000, those higher borrowing costs can literally add thousands of pounds a year to your repayments. Ouch. Second, this market reaction totally impacts the Independent Bank of England. With market concerns about UK borrowing lingering, forecasts now suggest that Bank of England interest rate cuts will likely be delayed until 2027. But wait, here is the silver lining. Delayed rate cuts mean savings rates stay super competitive. Right now, top easy access accounts are paying up to 5.00% AR, which means savers are still getting returns well above inflation. Let's look at Section 4, taxes on your savings and how to protect your money. Let's talk about the income tax personal allowance. This is the amount of money you can earn before you start paying income tax, and it has been totally frozen at £12,570 since all the way back in 2021. Since wages have naturally gone up over time, this freeze has quietly pushed hundreds of thousands of people into paying tax for the very first time or shoved them into higher tax brackets. It's a phenomenon people often call a stealth tax. However, Burnham has hinted he's looking at finally unfreezing this allowance. If it were raised in line with CPI inflation, which is roughly 2.6%, it would add about $326 to that tax-free threshold. For a basic rate taxpayer, that could save you roughly $65 a year. And even more importantly, it could protect a lot more of your savings interest from crossing over into taxable territory.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the upcoming changes to ISAs. Look closely at this comparison. These changes were actually originally set in motion by the previous chancellor, Rachel Reeves, and Burnham hasn't reversed them. For the current 2026-27 tax year, the cash ISA limit for anyone under 65 is still a generous $20,000. But from April 2027, that limit absolutely plummets to $12,000. Plus, a new rule is rolling out for stocks and shares ISAs. Cash held within them will get hit with a flat 22% tax charge if the proportion of cash exceeds permitted levels. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that this is your final year to take full advantage of that $20,000 limit.
Finally, Section 5, your Savings Action Plan, and our next steps. Taking all this data and the recent market movements into account, here are the exact concrete steps you should be considering right now. Step 1. Use your £20,000 ISA allowance before that April 2027 deadline. Since the limit is crashing down to £12,000 next year, you absolutely want to maximize your tax-free shelter right now. Step 2. Consider fixing your savings. With 1-year fixed cash ISAs sitting around 4.60% and 5-year fixed rate bonds reaching 4.94%, plus those rate cuts likely getting delayed, this is a prime window to lock in those strong rates. Step 3. Don't panic. Seriously, the market had a modest little freak out over the new administration, but Chancellor Haley's reassurances have steadied the ship. Keep a cool head. And step 4, watch the autumn budget closely. That's when we'll find out for sure about the personal tax allowance and any extra cost of living measures. To wrap things up today, I want to leave you with this question. How will you adapt your savings strategy before the April 2027 ISA changes take effect? The political landscape has shifted, the market has reacted, and the countdown to a much smaller ISA limit has officially begun. It is the absolute perfect time to sit down, review your finances, utilize your current allowances to their maximum potential, and make sure your money is working as hard as possible for you. Keep paying attention, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next explainer.